You sat down at that table thinking you had a read, you had studied, you had watched videos, you knew what you were doing, and then this guy shows up. He raises every hand. He three-bets you out of nowhere. He fires 3 barrels with nothing. He looks across the table at you like you are made of glass, and he takes your chips like he was born to do it. You try to fight back, and somehow you lose more. You tighten up, and he just runs you over. Nothing works. And by the end of the session, you are not just down money. You are questioning everything you thought you knew about poker. I have been there. Every serious player has been there. That feeling of helplessness against someone who just refuses to respect any hand you play. It is one of the most frustrating experiences in this game. And here is the truth that most coaches will not tell you directly. The reason that player was destroying you had almost nothing to do with the cards. It had everything to do with something much deeper, something that lives between your ears. Today, we are going to change that forever. This is not a basic strategy video. This is not a list of tips. What I am about to share with you is the exact mental and strategic framework that elite professional players use to not just survive against hyper-aggressive opponents, but to systematically destroy them, to turn their aggression into a weapon against themselves, to take their energy, their momentum, and their confidence and flip it into your biggest edge. By the time this video is over, you will never look at an aggressive player the same way again. You will not fear them. You will want them at your table, because they will become your most reliable source of profit. Stay with me, because what comes next is going to completely rewire the way you see this game, and the way you see yourself at the table. The aggressive player is not your enemy. He is your most generous donor. You just have not learned how to accept the gift yet. And before we dive into the deep strategy, I want to say this clearly. If you are tired of losing to these players, and you are ready for a complete system that transforms how you think and play, stay until the middle of this video, because I have something that will change everything for you. Let's go. Before you can destroy an aggressive player, you need to understand exactly what you are dealing with. Not all aggressive players are the same. Grouping them together is the first mistake most players make, and it costs them dearly. There are 3 distinct types you will encounter at every level, and understanding which one is sitting across from you is the foundation of everything that follows. The first type is the lag, the loose, aggressive player. This is the most sophisticated of the 3. Lags play many hands, they apply pressure constantly, and they do it with a logic behind it. They are not just gambling. They understand concepts like fold equity, range advantage, and positional pressure. Many of the best players in the world are lags. They make your life difficult because their aggression has structure. They know when to push and when to pull back. They are hard to read precisely because they are playing correctly, just more aggressively than most people are comfortable with. The second type is the maniac. This player is also aggressive, but the logic is thinner or completely absent. They raise constantly. They call 3-bets light. They fire into multi-way pots with no real range. Against the right strategy, maniacs are actually your most profitable opponents. They give action with bad hands far too often, and they cannot find the fold button when you have the goods. The problem is that most players panic against maniacs and start making emotional decisions. They play back too light. They get frustrated, and they become as reckless as the maniac themselves. The third type is what I call the over-aggressive regular. This player has studied the game enough to understand pressure and aggression as tools, but they have overcorrected. They apply pressure in spots where it does not make mathematical sense. They bluff too frequently. They 3-bet too wide. They are playing a pattern, not a strategy. And patterns, once identified, are exploitable in the most beautiful way imaginable. Here is the key insight that separates elite players from average ones. You do not respond to all 3 the same way. Against a true lag, you adjust your ranges and look for spots where your hand strength combines with position. Against a maniac, you trap and call wider. Against the over-aggressive regular, you identify their pattern and punish it systematically. Knowing what kind of aggressive player you face is not just information, it is power. It is the difference between reacting and responding. And here is what will keep this lesson alive in your mind. The aggressive player thinks they are hunting you. The truth is, from this point forward, you are the one setting the trap. Coming up next, the real reason aggressive players win against most opponents, and it has nothing to do with the cards they hold. This is where it gets deep. Here is a truth that most players refuse to accept. Aggressive players do not beat you because they run good. They beat you because of how you think. More specifically, they beat you because they have figured out something fundamental about human psychology that most poker players never examine, and it works on them every single time. When a player raises you, something happens in your brain. A threat response activates. Your heart rate increases slightly. Your focus narrows. The emotional part of your brain starts screaming at you to do something. Fold, fight back, protect what you have. This is not weakness. This is biology. It is the same response that kept your ancestors alive on the savannah. But at a poker table, it is a liability. And aggressive players, whether they know it consciously or not, are exploiting exactly this. Think about what happens in practice. An aggressive player raises before the flop. You call with a decent hand. The flop comes and you miss. They bet. Now you are already uncomfortable. You fold. Next hand, same thing. And the next. You start to wonder if they always have it. You start to tighten up. You start only playing hands you feel very confident about. And when you do play a strong hand, you play it so cautiously that you extract almost no value. The aggressive player has not just taken your chips, they have taken control of your decision-making process. This is called playing in a reactive mindset. You are no longer making decisions based on logic and probability. You are making decisions based on discomfort and fear. And this is where the exploitation deepens. Because once you are in reactive mode, the aggressive player can bluff you more, get more value from their strong hands, and basically write the script of the session while you just act in it. There is also a strategic dimension that most players overlook entirely. Aggressive players accumulate something invisible but enormously valuable at the table: the perceived range advantage. When someone is raising constantly, your brain begins to assume they always have something. Even when the math tells you they cannot possibly have a strong hand every time, your gut says otherwise. And most players follow their gut, not the math. Here is a real hand to illustrate this. You are in a cash game. You hold ace-king offsuit on the button. The aggressive regular in the cutoff 3-bets you to 4 times the big blind after your open. The flop comes ace-7-2 rainbow. You check. They fire a continuation bet immediately. Most players either call once and then fold the turn, or fold right on the flop because the aggressor always seems to have it. Neither play is optimal. The optimal play is to understand that their range in this spot is wide. It includes a ton of hands that miss this flop, and to play back with either a check raise or a well-timed flat to extract more later. The aggressor is making a mechanical move. You need to be making a surgical one. Most players don't lose to aggressive players because of bad luck. They lose because they outsource their decision-making to fear. Get ready, because in the next part we go into the specific mistakes that are costing you the most money against aggression. And some of them are going to surprise you. There is a reason the same players lose money to aggressive opponents session after session, while other players sit down at the same table and leave as the clear winner. It is not luck. It is not experience level alone. It is a set of very specific, very correctable mistakes that become ingrained habits. Let's break them down completely. The first and most devastating mistake is overfolding to aggression. When someone bets into you on every street, the instinct is to give them credit. You think, they wouldn't be betting this hard if they didn't have something. But here's the mathematical reality. If you fold to every third barrel more than 50% of the time, a thinking aggressive player only needs to bluff 25% of their betting range to show a profit against you. You are essentially paying them to bluff you. The second mistake is over-tightening your opening range. When you only enter pots with premium hands, every single bet you make becomes extremely easy to read. The aggressive player can simply fold whenever you show significant resistance because they know your range is so narrow that you must have a very strong hand. You lose all deception and all leverage. The third mistake, and this one is subtle, is playing in position against an aggressive player the same way you play out of position. Position is one of your greatest weapons, and most players underuse it dramatically. When you are in position against an aggressor, you have the last say on every street. This should change everything about how you play your strong hands, your medium strength hands, and your bluffs. The fourth mistake is calling too wide pre-flop and then having no plan for the flop. You see the aggressive player raise and you decide to defend. Fine. But then the flop comes, and you have no idea what you are doing. You check, they bet, you call. Turn, you check, they bet, you call. River, you check, they go for a large bet, and you are frozen. This is called passive calling, and it is a leak that aggressive players feast on. Every call you make needs to have a purpose and a plan. Here is a hand example. You are in the big blind with Jack 10 of hearts. An aggressive regular opens from the button. You defend. The flop is Queen 8-3 with 2 spades. You check. They bet 2/3 pot. What is your plan right now? If you have no plan beyond seeing what the turn brings, you are in trouble. You need to decide in advance. What turn cards improve your hand or improve your equity story? What is your check raise frequency on this flop? And with what hands? If you have no answer, you are just hoping, and hope is not a strategy. Every mistake against an aggressive player is a gift you hand them freely. Strategy is how you take those gifts back. What comes next will change the way you think at the table permanently. We are getting into how professionals actually think, and it is nothing like what most players assume. Do not touch that skip button. Before we go any further, and I want to be real with you right now, what I have been sharing in this video is just the surface of a much deeper system. If you are serious about transforming the way you play poker, not just against aggressive players but in every single situation at the table, I want to tell you about something that has genuinely changed the trajectory of thousands of players' careers. It is called the Mind of a Grinder Complete System. And it is not just a poker book. It is a collection of 10 complete ebooks, each one designed to take you deeper into a different dimension of poker mastery. From hand reading to mental game, from bankroll strategy to range construction, from tournament dynamics to the psychological warfare that happens every single time you sit down at a table. This is not theory for its own sake. Every concept in the system was built from real games, real losses, real breakthroughs. Here is what makes it different from everything else you have read or watched. Most poker content teaches you what to do. The Mind of a Grinder teaches you how to think. And that distinction is everything, because when you know how to think like a grinder, the right play in any situation becomes obvious. You stop second-guessing yourself. You stop freezing under pressure. You stop making emotional decisions and start making calculated ones. That shift does not just improve your game, it transforms it. The players who have gone through this system describe the same experience consistently. They feel like they finally have a language for everything that was happening at the table that they could not explain before. The confusion disappears. The fear disappears. What replaces it is clarity, confidence, and a kind of calm that makes other players at the table feel like they are the ones who do not belong. Right now, in the description of this video, you will find the link to the Mind of a Grinder Complete System. I am not going to tell you it is for everyone, but if you are the kind of player who is serious enough to be watching a video like this, if you are the kind of person who is looking for the real answer and not just the quick fix, then this system was built for you. Go check it out, and then come back, because the best parts of this lesson are still ahead. You can keep playing with the tools you have, or you can build an entirely new toolkit. The second option is always the better game. What comes next is where everything clicks together. We go inside the mind of a professional facing a hyper-aggressive player, and you will feel the difference immediately. This is the part that changes everything. Most players approach an aggressive opponent reactively. Something happens, a raise, a 3-bet, a big bluff, and they respond to it. They are one step behind the whole time. Professional players do not operate this way. They do not react to what happened. They respond to what is happening across a range of possible scenarios, and they have already thought through most of those scenarios before the hand even begins. The first thing a professional does when they identify an aggressive player is build a mental model of that player's range in every situation. This is not a mystical skill. It is a structured way of thinking. They ask, how often is this player raising from this position? How often are they 3-betting? What kinds of hands do they continue with on different board textures? Over just a few hands, this model becomes increasingly accurate. And once you have a model, you stop playing against a person and you start playing against a range, which is something you can calculate, exploit, and profit from. The second thing professionals do is use position as a thinking tool, not just an advantage. Most players know position is important. Fewer players understand how to weaponize it against aggressive players. When a pro has position on a lag or maniac, they are not just seeing the action last, they are controlling the pace of information in the hand. They slow play the flop to build a pot they can take on the turn. They float with medium equity hands because they know the aggressor will slow down on the turn. They extract information cheaply and then punish mercilessly when the time is right. Let me walk you through a professional's inner monologue during a real hand. You have pocket sevens on the button. The aggressive regular in the cutoff opens. You call. The flop comes 10-6-2 rainbow. They check. Here is what a professional is thinking in that moment. They checked. That is interesting. Their range here includes some 10x hands, some overcards, some pocket pairs, and a significant number of air hands. If I bet, they fold the air and call with anything decent. If I check back, I keep all those air hands in their range for the turn, and I can punish the turn more effectively. I will check back, keep the pot small, and see what they do on the turn. This is thinking in ranges and frequencies, not in individual hands. It is thinking several moves ahead and choosing the line that extracts the most value from the widest portion of the opponent's range. The third element of professional thinking is strategic patience. A pro does not need to win every pot. They understand that the goal is to win the maximum amount from situations where their range is ahead of the opponent's range, and to lose the minimum when it is not. Against an aggressive player, this means resisting the urge to fight back on every street and choosing your battles with precision. Amateurs play hands, professionals play ranges, masters play situations. Keep watching, because the counterattack strategy starts in the very next part. This is where we flip the script on aggressive players completely. Now we build the weapon. You understand who the aggressive player is. You understand why they win against most people. You know the mistakes to avoid. You have seen how professionals think. Now it is time to put it all together into a systematic counterattack strategy that you can apply immediately at any table. Step 1. Position selection. This is the most underused and most powerful adjustment you can make. The single biggest edge you can have against an aggressive player is to be seated to their left. When you are on the direct left of a lag or maniac, you have position on them in almost every hand you play. This means you always act after them. You see their aggression before you have to commit. You can call their opens and then apply pressure on boards that miss their wide range. You can 3-bet them with a wider value range because they are likely to 4-bet or call too loosely. Simply choosing where to sit, or waiting for a seat change when one becomes available, can increase your win rate against an aggressive player significantly before you even play a single hand. Step 2. Range calibration. When you know a player is opening too wide, their range is full of weak hands. That means the average value of their range is lower than it appears. What this tells you is that your calling ranges and 3-betting ranges should adjust upward. You can 3-bet lighter for value. You can call pre-flop with suited connectors and speculative hands because the implied odds are excellent. They will fire multiple streets with weaker holdings and pay you off when you hit. Step 3. Check raising as a weapon. Most recreational players check raise only with very strong hands. Against aggressive players, this is a mistake. A well-timed check raise with a semi-bluff, a flush draw, an open-ended straight draw, or even a pair plus a draw is devastatingly effective. Here is why. An aggressive player fires a continuation bet and now faces a check raise. Their wide range includes a lot of hands that cannot continue. They fold more than their fair share. And when they do call, you still have equity to improve. The check raise accomplishes two things at once. It wins the pot immediately a significant percentage of the time, and it builds a large pot in positions where you have equity and a story that makes sense. Real hand. You are in the big blind with 8-7 of clubs. The aggressive button raises. You call. Flop comes 6-5 king with 2 clubs. You check. They bet half pot. This is an ideal check raise spot. You have a flush draw and an open-ended straight draw. You have massive equity, over 50% against many hands in their range. You check raise to 2.5 times their bet. They fold their air hands immediately. The hands that call are now in a very uncomfortable spot against your equity. You are now the aggressor. The check raise is not a defensive weapon. Against the right opponent, it is the most aggressive thing you can do. Hold on. What comes next is the trap strategy. And this is where things get genuinely dangerous for aggressive players. There is a concept that most players understand intellectually, but execute terribly at the table: the trap. Setting a trap means deliberately underrepresenting your hand strength to lure an aggressive opponent into building a large pot where you are a significant favorite. Done correctly, it is the single most profitable weapon in your arsenal against a player who cannot slow down. The trap works because of what we already know about aggressive players. They bet. They always bet. They will fire into you whether they have something or nothing. This is your advantage, because when you have a very strong hand, you do not need to do the betting. They will do it for you. All you need to do is stay in the hand and let them build the pot. Here is the key to trapping effectively. You need to be on a board texture that your opponent's range hits frequently, or that your opponent feels confident firing on. Dry low boards are often the best for trapping with overpairs. Coordinated boards with draws are excellent for trapping with sets and two-pair, because the aggressive player will barrel for protection and momentum. The trap is most effective when the board narrative makes it plausible that you are checking with a mediocre hand. Masterclass trap hand. You are holding pocket aces in the small blind. The aggressive regular raises from the hijack. You decide to just call instead of three-betting. A smooth call that keeps their range wide and sets the trap beautifully. The flop comes 9-7-4 with two hearts. You check. They bet 3/4 pot. You call. Turn is a 2 of clubs, a complete blank. You check again. They fire a second barrel, slightly larger. You call. River is a jack of hearts, completing the flush draw. You check for the third time. They go for a large river bet. You raise. Large. Their range here includes missed draws, pairs below an ace, and bluffs. Most of them are trapped. This hand extracts maximum value because you gave them every opportunity to build the pot with a range that cannot beat aces. Pot control is the flip side of trapping. It means deliberately keeping the pot small when you have a marginal hand against an aggressive player. When you have second pair, top pair with a weak kicker, or a one-pair hand on a scary board, the best line is often a check back on the flop or turn to prevent the pot from escalating into a stack-off situation you cannot justify. The trap is not passive. It is the most calculated form of patience in poker. You are not waiting. You are hunting. What comes next is about something most coaches gloss over, but professionals obsess about: the mental side. Because none of this works if your mind is not right. Everything we have discussed so far assumes one thing: that you can execute under pressure. And that assumption is where most players fail. You can know every concept in this video perfectly. You can have studied ranges, bet sizing, check raise frequencies, and bluff detection for months. But the moment that aggressive player fires a three-barrel bluff at you with a terrifying board and your heart rate goes up, all of that knowledge becomes inaccessible if your mental game is not developed. Here is what actually happens in your mind during a session against a hyper-aggressive opponent. The early part of the session, you feel fine. You are executing. And then a hand goes wrong. Maybe you three-bet them, they four-bet you, and you fold. Maybe you called down to the river and they had it. The immediate reaction for most players is a combination of frustration and doubt. The frustration says this is unfair. The doubt says maybe I am making the wrong plays. Both of these emotional states lead to the same place: suboptimal decisions in the next hand. Professional players have developed what I call emotional neutrality in the face of variance. They understand deeply, not just intellectually but in their bones, that any individual hand outcome tells them almost nothing about whether they made the right decision. A correct call on the river that loses is still a correct call. A fold that turns out to be a fold against the nuts was the right fold if the math supported it. The result is not the measure of the decision. The process is. Here's a mental technique that elite players use. Between hands, they run a quick reset. They take one slow breath. They ask themselves a single question: am I making this decision based on what just happened, or based on what the current situation actually calls for? If the answer is the former, they pause, recalibrate, and do not act until the answer is the latter. This sounds simple. In practice, it is one of the hardest skills to develop in poker. But it is also one of the highest ROI skills you can build. There is also something I call manufactured confidence. When you sit across from an aggressive player who is running over the table, they project an aura of control. And that aura, if you absorb it, becomes self-fulfilling. Professional players do not absorb it. They manufacture their own version of it. They sit up straight. They breathe deliberately. They make eye contact without aggression. They make decisions slowly and with conviction. They project the energy of someone who is completely comfortable with where they are. And this projection actually influences how the aggressive player perceives the threat level across the table. In poker, the player who controls their emotional state does not just play better. They make the other player play worse. The next section is going to tie the technical and the mental together in a way that no other poker content has ever done. We are talking about the moment when everything clicks, and how to manufacture that moment deliberately. One of the most important questions in modern poker is this: do you play game theory optimal, or do you play an exploitative strategy? This question matters enormously against aggressive players, because the answer is not what most people think. And getting it right is the difference between good strategy and elite strategy. Game theory optimal, or GTO, is a mathematical framework where you play a balanced strategy that theoretically cannot be exploited. You have the right mix of value hands and bluffs at every decision point. You call the right frequency, you raise the right frequency, and you fold the right frequency. Against a player who is also playing perfectly, GTO is the correct approach. But here is the truth: almost no one at your table is playing perfectly. And against imperfect players, especially over-aggressive ones, GTO is leaving money on the table. Exploitative strategy means you identify a specific leak in your opponent's game and you adjust your strategy to maximize your profit from that leak. Against aggressive players, the most common exploitable leaks are over-bluffing at a higher frequency than mathematically justified, continuation betting too wide on boards that do not connect well with their opening range, and 3-betting too light by putting in big money pre-flop with marginal hands. To detect overbluffing, you need to think about what strong hands they actually have in a given situation. If an aggressive player raises from under the gun, calls your 3-bet, and then leads into you on a dry board of ace-jack 2, ask yourself, how many premium hands do they have in this exact scenario? Their UTG raising range, after calling a 3-bet, should include mainly aces, kings, queens, ace-king. A dry board heavily favors your 3-betting range, not theirs. If they are firing into this board with regularity, they are overbluffing, and overbluffing means calling down is correct. When you identify an overbluffing spot, you call wider than GTO would suggest, not because you are stubborn, because the math supports it. Advanced concept: range versus range advantage on specific boards. When you 3-bet and the flop comes queen-jack 10, that board actually favors the caller in many 3-bet pots. The reason is that the 3-better's range includes many high-card hands, but the caller's range has more sets, 2 pairs, and straights on this connected board. A sophisticated player adjusts for this. They understand that the board texture changes who has the advantage, regardless of who was the aggressor pre-flop. This is the level of thinking that separates good players from great ones. GTO is your baseline. Exploitative play is your edge. The master knows when to use each one, and transitions between them seamlessly. We are almost at the finish line. The final part of this video is going to hit you emotionally and strategically in a way that you will carry with you every single time you sit down to play. Do not stop watching. I want to take a moment before we close this out, because this is not just a strategy video. At least it should not be, if you have been truly paying attention. What we have covered today is not a collection of tips. It is a complete philosophy for how to approach the most difficult and most profitable challenge in poker, turning the table on the player who thinks they are in control. Let's bring everything together into the full picture. You now know that aggressive players, whether they are lags, maniacs, or over-aggressive regulars, are not unbeatable forces. They are predictable patterns. They are exploitable tendencies. They are players who have found something that works against most people and have leaned into it. Your job is not to match their energy. Your job is to absorb their aggression and redirect it, the same way a master of a martial art does not meet force with force, but uses the opponent's momentum to create their own opening. Now to sit in position on them whenever possible, to identify whether they are a lag with structure, a maniac without it, or a pattern player you can predict. To calibrate your ranges against their wide opening and 3-betting frequencies. To check raise with your semi-bluffs on boards where their range is wide and vulnerable. To trap with your strong hands on boards that invite their aggression. To call down wider when the math supports it and their bluffing frequency is too high. To pot control with marginal hands instead of building pots you cannot commit to. To combine exploitative adjustments with a GTO baseline so you stay unpredictable while still maximizing profit. And beyond the strategy, you know that your mental game is the lever that controls all of that emotional neutrality, the reset between hands, the manufactured confidence. These are not soft skills. They are high-performance tools that separate the players who understand poker from the players who truly master it. Here is what I want to leave you with. The next time you sit down at a table and an aggressive player starts raising every hand, pressing every spot, acting like they own the whole room, I want you to feel something you have never felt before in that situation. Not fear, not frustration, not confusion. I want you to feel calm. I want you to feel ready. I want you to think, almost quietly to yourself, I have been waiting for this. Because now you have the tools. Now you have the framework. Now you understand the game being played beneath the game being played. And the player across from you, the one firing 3 barrels with nothing, the one trying to steal your blinds every orbit, the one who used to make you feel helpless, does not know what is coming. You are the grinder. And grinders do not fear the pressure, they feed on it. If this video changed the way you think about aggressive players, smash that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs it. And if you are ready to take everything you learned today 10 levels deeper, the Mind of a Grinder Complete system is in the description right now. 10 ebooks, 1 complete transformation. The link is there. The choice is yours. But the best time to level up is always right now. You were not born to fear aggressive players. You were born to become the most dangerous player in the room. See you at the tables.